Greetings and welcome to the Power of Vintage today. In this episode, this special Atari episode, we're going to take a look at these systems back here, a series of Atari ST systems, and benchmark them in various different ways and kind of compare how they work with one another. What we have here is we have a stock Atari 520 ST, stock 1040 ST, stock Mega ST4, as well as upgraded ST4, Mega ST4, stock STE, as well as accelerated upgraded STE, Mega ST, and Falcon 030 upgraded in multiple different configurations as well. So So first, let's go over the exact details of these systems here. We have the 520 ST. This is an original 520 ST from June of 1985. Pretty early model. It's just the standard Motorola 68000 processor. It does have 1 megabyte of RAM that was upgraded piggyback style. It also is operating TOS 1.04 or 1.4, Rainbow TOS. Nothing else besides that. Fairly simple, fairly basic. This 1040 ST here, STF here, also relatively early in this life cycle. TOS 1.04, Rainbow TOS. 4 megabytes of RAM, upgraded RAM. Standard 68000 processor, Motorola 68000 processor. And nothing else special besides that, just basic Atari ST. The Mega ST here, I'm going to run it and test it, benchmark it with three different configurations. First configuration is base. Base meaning that it has the 68000 processor, running 4 megabytes of RAM, and a blitter chip. Basically, that's the only difference between this and these guys. It has a blitter chip. We also are going to run this with a Terriblefire TF536, benchmarking it with it as well. And then we'll also do a benchmarking of the video portion of it, because it's not going to change the CPU at all, with a VGA graphics, a Tseng ET4000 VGA GPU installed in it. So some slight differences there. This 1040 STE, that's actually a 520 STE, that's been upgraded with RAM to 4 megabytes of RAM. The base configuration, 8 megahertz processor. It has the upgraded or the enhanced video and audio, although we don't benchmark audio, we're just benchmarking the video. So we'll have some improvements in the video, including a blitter chip. And that's it, all right? There is also an accelerator in it, and one of Exxos' solder-in accelerators. He also has some great accelerators that are plug and play with these guys as well. This accelerator, or booster, I think he calls it a booster, is a 68000 processor running at 32 megahertz instead of the typical 8 megahertz. That's basically it. And this one's running TOS 1.62 in the base configuration, and TOS 2.05, that's basically the final TOS, or 2.06, excuse me, 2.06, the final TOS that was released in the accelerated condition. Regarding the TOS for this guy, this is TOS 1.04 for the base configuration, and then EMU TOS 1.1 for the accelerated and GPU added versions. Moving back to the Mega STE here, this is a base configuration, nothing special, nothing other than it has an FPU, a floating point unit, coprocessor in it. It is running at 16 megahertz, 4 megabytes of RAM. It has the enhanced video that the STE here has, the 1040 STE has. And so you'll probably see some similarities between that one, these two here. Lastly, we have the Atari Falcon 030. Love this computer, awesome. So we're gonna test it in 3 different configurations. The first configuration is stock, base. It has the 68030 running at 16 megahertz CPU. It has the Falcon graphics, Falcon sound as well. It also has, we'll be running all of these in as similar as a fashion from a graphic settings, etc. as possible to make certain that we're not overly debiting anything. It does not, in the base configuration, have a floating point CPU coprocessor in it as well. So basic as you can be. We'll also run this Falcon 030 with an accelerator board called the DFB1. This is a 68030 running at 50 megahertz, along with a processor at FPU that's added in as well, also running at 50 megahertz. In addition to that, it will have 64 megabytes of fast RAM, Altram, TT RAM. There's a lot of different ways it's called, but extra fast RAM that super speeds it up. And that will be that DFB booster version. The last configuration is I have a semi-functional CT63. That is an accelerator, the ultimate accelerator board for an Atari Falcon. In this case, this is running, or this one that I'm using is sporting a 68060 LC variant. This is the light variant, so it doesn't have a floating point unit, an FPU coprocessor built in, but it'll be running at 80 megahertz. It's a pretty sporty chip, runs pretty quickly, not entirely stable. It has some issues. I mean, it's stable, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't have, for some reason, it has issues with the RAM. It doesn't recognize the installed fast RAM that's on it. It recognizes it, but really doesn't recognize it. So there's some issues with it. It runs pretty well. There are some issues with incompatibility, and you kind of see that as we go along. There's some of the tests it doesn't finish, specifically Frontier. You know, can it run Crisis or can it run Frontier? In this case, the CT63 that I have cannot run Frontier. It doesn't like it. But let's outline the methodology for benchmarking. Number one, the first element we're going to do is a synthetic benchmark. This runs through a bunch of different tests, specifically for the graphics, for the CPU, for the RAM, for the ROM, etc. And this is it's called a Gembench. I believe it's actually Exxos is the one who coded this together. It runs through a bunch of scenarios for it, and we're going to use the baseline. So the baseline we're comparing against will be effectively this kind of computer here, a 1040 ST, a 1040 STF is the baseline, and you'll actually see that in the numbers that these two actually come very, very close and are very similar to that benchmark, so that we have a common benchmark across the board. So that's the synthetic benchmark we're using, is Gembench. The second benchmark we'll be using is Frontbench, which is Frontier, Elite Frontier at the game. There's a benchmarking thing that runs through how many frames are generated based upon the speed of the computers. And this gives you an idea of how that software would run and the relative graphics and CPU performance within that kind of a game there. So that is also, it gets a nice objective result, or at least a measured result, a numerical result. We then will run through 2 other games that are relatively resource intensive. We'll run through Civilization, the original Civilization, and go through a couple different rounds of movements and such. You can kind of see how it flows, and then one of the, like we call it, a cutscene of either a riot or soldiers taking over a city, where you can actually see a distinctly different speed in how they run. The game actually runs substantially faster with a faster CPU and faster processing capabilities. If you think about longer term, if you go out further out in the game when there's lots of AI moves being made. And then the last software we'll actually run is Ultima VI. And Ultima VI was one of the latest releases, a very late release of on the Atari ST. If you run it in a stock Atari ST model, it is literally a slideshow. In my mind, it's unplayable. And I have a lot of tolerance for playing games, but the nice thing is it also gives you some scaling as to how the game performs with different computer capabilities. Why do you accelerate old computers? I've seen some comments on my places. I've seen comments on Facebook. I've seen comments all sorts of different forums. Why in the world would you accelerate these old computers? Just play them as they are and enjoy them as they are. Or if you want to really play fast games, why don't you just use an emulator? Those are all great points. The intent for me is not just to play games. This is me exploring nostalgia, for lack of a better term. Right, as a kid, this was the computer I had. I loved my Atari 520 ST. I spent way too much time on it, loved it though, and it was my first computer that I actually ever owned myself. I would have loved for my Atari ST to have been faster, and the fact is if you actually look in the old Start or ST format magazines, or even Antic to some degree, you can find CPU upgrades from the 80s and 90s, where they're either upgrading the speed of a 68,000, adding in a 68030, adding in all sorts of upgrades to these systems, right? So this is not something, what you're seeing here, none of these upgrades are outside the realm. Well, maybe the 68060, that might be a little outside. It was done in the late 90s. It was way past my time when I was using this computer. But the 68030 upgrades, those were something that were actually very prevalent, and or they were advertised in the Atari ST magazines. However many people had them, I have no idea. But those are the kinds of things I dreamed and drooled over, would love to do. And of course, for me, it was mostly just about playing games. But nonetheless, this is part of the nostalgia of me trying to, hey, this is something I would have loved to have done when I was a kid. And the cool thing about it is this is fun. I love tinkering, opening these things up, playing around with them, seeing how much we can tweak them and make them perform better and just have fun with them. I don't know about you, but I do the same thing with my modern computers as well. I find it a blast to actually upgrade and tinker. Now, all that said and done, let's get to the awesome benchmarking. What we'll do is we'll show up the benchmarks, we'll show up some various different charts, line bar graphs, that kind of thing, to kind of compare how they all performing differently to one another. And you'll see some interesting things. I think you'll see some interesting things. But at the end of the day, why do this? Because.
Now what you see here is just a fast forward through the various different benchmarking. I'm not going to narrate everything because, to be frank, it'll just be very repetitive. This is done over and over again. You'll see the results. They'll pop up on the screen for a little bit, etc., etc. You'll see how they perform in the various different programs and games. If you want to see the final results, you can fast forward to the end and actually see the benchmarks in a nice bar chart format. All right, have fun. So here we have the benchmarks, all the numerics that we have, and a nice bar chart. I don't think anything is surprising here after seeing all those various different results there. Obviously, the Falcon benefits significantly from the improved video capability that it has versus the other systems specifically. But also, there are some significant benefits from the accelerators for both the DFB1 as well as the CT63. That said, the Terriblefire 536 does a great job as well. And to be frank, there are very few games or very few programs that really take full advantage of the Falcon 030's video capabilities that it has, using actually true VGA, 256 colors, 645, 480, etc. And so you're limited to what the Atari ST program software was able to produce. But the nice thing is you can kind of see how significantly these things can impact that. At the end of the day, your use will vary depending upon the programs that you like to use, the games you like to play, etc., etc. But hopefully this gives you at least an idea as to the relative performance of the different capabilities of these different boosters, accelerators, as well as just the computers in general.
Whew! That's a lot of numbers, a lot of charts, a lot of screen capturing. This is the first time I've done this. Hopefully it turned out. If it didn't, well, let me know in the comments below. If you liked it, let me know in the comments below. If you disagree with putting accelerators in your computers, let me know in the comments below. Share your thoughts. Share why you would never do something like this, or share why you wish you could do this. There's a lot of fun stuff out there. Do what you like. Have fun with it. Just sharing what I'm enjoying. Please like and subscribe. Have an awesome day.